Welcome back. Welcome back to the Women's Lounge. It's Wednesday, and you know what time it is. We're back at the Women's Lounge where women talk power, policy, and really the fight for fundamental rights. It's December 10th, and today is Human Rights Day. Woo! As we're losing our rights, but today is Human Rights Day, so I want to make sure I mention that. It reminds us of the radical truth, Human Rights Day, that rights are only protected when people have the power to exercise them and to live fully as themselves. So happy Human Rights Day. So today we're going to talk about birthright citizenship and civil rights and everything in between. What is it, right? So what is birthright citizenship? We're talking about the right to vote, the right to make decisions about our bodies, our families, our futures. Um, but we're also talking about the president's new cruel rules, as I'm calling them. So President Trump is really currently against birthright citizenship as it is up for debate. It has reached the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is preparing to hear Trump versus Washington, a case that could redefine the constitutional meaning of birthright citizenship for the first time in a century. So at issue, it's President Trump's January 2025 Executive Order 14160, which is called Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. So this instructs federal agencies not to recognize citizenship for children born in the United States to temporary visitors, or as they call illegal aliens. We'd like to call them undocumented human beings. So that's what's at stake here. So they are saying that if their birth occurs more than 30 days after the order takes effect, the ruling will shape immigration policy, define the limits of executive power, but also decide really who belongs, decide whether the United States continues its historical interpretation of de sole, Latin for right of the soil, the principle of the 14th Amendment, the principle that the person becomes a citizen simply by being born within the country's territory. So when the justices weigh the arguments, they will be focusing on really that one first sentence and the meaning of the first sentence in the 14th Amendment, known as the Citizenship Clause. So the Citizenship Clause currently reads, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So both sides agree that to be granted birthright citizenship under the Constitution, that's the 14th Amendment, a child must be born inside U.S. borders, and the parents must be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. However, the disagreement is in the interpretation of that second requirement, meaning who falls under the jurisdiction of the United States in this context, who belongs, who is considered a people of the United States. And that's the argument here. And to be fair, at this point, two of the president's wives, one ex-wife and the current wife, are immigrants. And so they are naturalized. And so that means that some of this ruling may also affect his children. So we'll see where that leads. Because one of the parents was not a citizen at the time that their kids were born. So we'll see how that is interpreted. So the alternative is significantly a restrictive model that could alter the nation's demographic, but also alter what we thought was settled law and constitutional law in the 14th Amendment. So that's something that will affect the our demographics are in our constitutional landscape for decades. The other case that was before This was Dred Scott versus Sanford, in which the Supreme Court held that Black people enslaved or free could not be U.S. citizens and that Congress lacked the power to ban slavery in territories. Um, but once the 14th Amendment passed in 1866 and ratified in 1868, it overturned that decision to yes, fundamental rights to formerly enslaved people. So the Citizenship Clause states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, citizens of the United States. And I'm repeating this because it's really simple. It states that if you are born in the United States, you are a citizen. It has been confirmed. It was confirmed in United States versus Wong Kim Ark, which held that children born in the United States to immigrant parents are citizens at birth, regardless of their parents' immigration status. So what's at stake here is really looking at the children that will be born, and what is their citizenship status, that they should be guaranteed citizen status based on the 14th Amendment. The president is trying to dismantle that, dismantle the protections, and dismantle birthright citizenship. I know when I was growing up, they called some of the kids inker babies, which the parents were undocumented and their children born to the United States could possibly help their parents get a work permit or be naturalized. So what we're seeing here is really a rise on the attack of civil liberties, a rise of an authoritarian government that is currently telling us who belongs and who will be a citizen is not immigrants. That's what this is. That's what the rhetoric is. So let's call it what it is. It is a racist rhetoric. So the efforts to strip citizenship from children born in the United States is not only cruel, but it is unprecedented. We're talking about the 14th Amendment being passed in 1868. I mean, we have to now look at, okay, what we thought was settled law may not be settled law, just like what we went through with Roe v. Wade, we thought was settled law, and then the Supreme Court dismantled that. So we'll see where that lands us. But we're also looking at the ongoing threat and increasingly interference in local democracy. Across the country, we're looking at, ICE being deployed across the country. But there are some good news. As of today, Miami has a female mayor, and it is the first Democrat since the 90s. So the tide may be turning. So we've got to continue to talk about what's happening and to not sweep it under the rug. And we know it's tough. I know it's tough. It's tough for me to think of what's happening to some of these families being separated. It's tough for me to think that I could do more, or we could all do more, but I also can't let it get away from me. I also have to make sure that I am talking in a way where we as a collective understand and know that we have a responsibility to take care of each other, but also to hold each other accountable, right? So staying loud, that's part of it. So we're looking at ICE being deployed in New Orleans. We're looking at ICE being deployed in Arizona. They were back in Chicago for a bit. They were definitely in Los Angeles over the week. So we are going to continue speaking about I think that's domestic terrorism, to turn Department of Homeland Security to put out a whole enforcement regime on immigrants based on the color of their skin is not democracy. That isn't. And so we need to call it what it is. It's not. It's control. It's about control, and it's about controlling who belongs in the country and who they deem belongs in the country. And the current state is that if you're white, you belong in the country. That's the conversation we're having. That is the conversation the Department of Homeland Security is having, because although they say this is not racist. What we are seeing is brown people being targeted in the streets. So it is racist. So that's what we're talking about. We're diving in. We're going to dive in into with Monica from ACLU. Monica Hopkins is the executive director of ACLU in Washington, D.C. She has been battling to protect the rights and autonomy of D.C. residents and sounding the alarm on the dangerous precedent that this current administration and the power grabs that can be set for the rest of the country. So she's on the front lines, because we know that when fundamental rights are stripped from one city, they can be stripped from all of us. I'm going to pose a question to you that was posed to me. What current fundamental rights have citizens of the United States lost? Yes, currently, someone sent that question out to me, so I'm going to pose it to you. I know the answer, but I'm hoping you can send an answer back to me. All right, coming up, here we go. Let's dig in with Monica. Thank you for joining me, Monica. On this Wednesday, we're back at the Women's Lounge, and woo, we've got a lot to talk about.
We have a lot to talk about as the year wraps up.
Absolutely, and I think we touched upon it. It's 2025, and that's how we're feeling.
Right, exactly.
Um, so today we want to talk to you about civil rights, the federal takeover, and I know you're ACLU Washington D.C. because I think most people don't even understand that there's different chapters and different things that they're
Right.
handling. So I want to start big on the from your vantage point, ACLU-DC. Whew. What do you see as the most urgent civil rights crisis that is facing everyone right now? And I think most people say Americans, but the dismantling of civil rights currently. What do you see as the biggest issue?
Yeah, I'm glad you made that distinction of, Americans, because everyone in this country, there is the rule of law, right? So for everyone in this country, no matter who you are, how you came here, and I would say the dismantling of due process, this run up against the rule of law, the consolidation of presidential power, um, every single issue that we look at when you're looking at civil rights, whether it be immigration or women's rights or, LGBT equality, all of those things are sort of the issues that touch them are running up against consolidation of presidential power, due process, and the rule of law.
Absolutely. And I think someone posed a question to me, and I don't know if they were trolling me, but they said, well, talk to me about what fundamental right have we lost?
Ugh. I I've actually like heard that same thing, and it makes my head like snap to the person and say, where are you positioned sort of in the social sort of stratosphere? Because I think that the civil rights that we have been losing, this expansion of presidential power and giving the president sort of um, the power to uh, sort of I wouldn't say he's controlling the Supreme Court, but some of the decisions out of the Supreme Court are confounding, and have given sort of expansive power. The one I am when we talk about due process and the rule of law, um, the ability for ICE agents to stop, question, detain people because of the color of their skin or the language that they speak, something that was sort of decided on the shadow docket in between, and things that are on that shadow docket
Right.
don't have the full briefing or justifications. Um, that is a civil right that, people who are Black and brown in this country have lost. You have a right to not be stopped, detained, which is a Fourth Amendment violation to seize someone just because of the color of your skin or the language you speak.
And I think what when we talk about that, it's being sold to us, and I'm saying sold to us is public safety, right, or security. And so, in my head, those are code words for we're taking rights away for public safety. So, when we cut through the narrative, how can we explain to someone of what's really at stake when someone says it's for your safety?
I think, one of the interesting things, particularly in this environment, in the age we are in right now, is that things move very quickly. They are in sound bites, they are in talking points, and stopping to say, what do you mean by public safety? What does that really mean? And what does that mean to you?
Right.
Because public safety to me means, you know, yes, I live in a community where I have, access to public transportation and I am allowed to cross the street without someone hitting me with their car. And yes, I have a law enforcement agency that we can trust to know how they are going to behave in certain situations, that they are accountable to the community. Public safety is not having armed, masked guards kidnap people off the street. That is something that we hear happens in other countries that do not have democracies. So to say that something like that makes us all safe, it is fear-based, it creates fear, it creates mistrust of, folks who are part of our community and who are seizing people in our community.
And I'll say it, it's a lie. It's a lie. I think that part of it
Yeah.
is that most people, we need to call it out as a lie. I don't know if you saw the video of the young woman that they chased in Georgia. She's a citizen. As
Yeah.
a young girl, there are 4 masked men running after her who may or may not be ICE.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said a lie because I think when we look at sort of the duration too, and you can look at what is going on. I mean, anyone would flee, right? From the police. Like we assume they're police, right? That's the
Yes,
important part.
exactly.
We don't know. So it's reasonable. A reasonable person might do that action. Um, and those are really jarring images, but then there are also these images that are the big lie too about sending in the National Guard and, oh, it's just for your safety because they're just there. They deter crime. Like they're not doing anything. And all of this is a big lie to normalize it. So over time, we're like, oh, well, that just happens. That just happens. They are, the lie is it's about crime. And then we are all safer. It's no big deal. And when it becomes normalized, then we much more easily allow the government to overstep, do not hold them accountable for even the small things that they do that pile up over time. And we see it on both ends, right? Just the incredibly atrocious stuff, and then the small things that are sliding through that are just eroding our rights.
And I think it erodes our rights, but it also we start to look at it, it's normal. We have the National
Mhm.
Guards. For example, one of our offices had ICE across from us for
Yeah.
a while. We were in Boyle Heights in Los Angeles. And so it started to feel like we can't normalize this. We cannot say we're okay with them just hanging out to do what?
Well, so I travel to work on the metro here in DC, and what was interesting is I just did a head count of National Guard members on my way to work just one day, and I counted 16. They were standing outside of the metro in a group. They were standing when I got off the metro in a group. There was actually a group of them standing at the top of the metro escalators with additional law enforcement agencies that were not the National Guard. They were not Metro Police. They were not our local police. And so I think you have this exactly what you said, right? Like it just becomes normal that over time I find myself having to remind myself when I get off the metro, this is not normal.
Yes, this is not normal, and I wanna start passing out whistles.
I know.
Call it out. There's
Yeah,
some
yeah,
black oh, but that's just me. I wanna talk for, like, for the listeners that may feel overwhelmed in the scale of what's happening at ICE, and,
yeah,
as you know, the Supreme Court is ruling on, the right to, birthright citizenship, and so
yeah.
there's a lot of attacks and a lot of threats. I would say what's one thing or the most important thing that the average person can do to fight back, to continue to advocate for rights?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to figure out what your capacity is. So, I think that's the thing about any activism, any engagement, no matter when, is that sometimes we think it looks like only one thing. So, get out and march, right? And yes, number one, we need people to show up. When people show up, it works. And, we are seeing that time and time again. You said the whistles, right? Like, there are phone trees across this country where ICE is showing up and people are showing up at schools, at ICE detention centers. They are telling people, and when people show up, ICE agents get scared that they shouldn't be there and they leave. And
Funny.
so, I think showing up. Now, what that means to you is it showing up in your local community to walk children home from school because their parents are afraid to go pick them up? Um, is it showing up at, a local city council meeting and making your voice heard? Is it showing up in the way that you are calling 5 congressional members every afternoon? You put 30 minutes aside and it's the consistency and it is the showing up. And so I don't have an exact, like, do this thing, but there are so many things for people to get involved in right now that picking one local thing that fulfills your capacity and one national thing that fulfills your capacity. Um, that is my sort of call to action.
So I like the local and the national because I think that some folks are like, "Well, I don't see that. I'm not affected." And it's like, no, no, it's happening. Um,
Yeah.
so it may not be happening in your neighborhood right now, but it's happening. So I do like the local and the national. I also think that it's about truly holding the line and holding accountable. Because when some people lose their rights, it means we all lose our rights.
There is a poem that came out of World War II. And I'm not gonna get it right, but I think once I start, people will remember, and it was, like, first I came for, and then it just sort of went down the list, and then it says, "And then they came for me."
Right.
And
They
I
care
think
for everyone else. Yeah.
and that is what's happening right now, and I just wanna go back for 1 second because I really wanna name something in this moment too.
Mm.
When we are talking about capacity, we are also talking about safety and
Yes.
what we know right now, but in this country, is that we have white privilege. And we have privilege because of our sex, We have privilege because of our race. We have privilege because of our class. And in this moment, it is not just about standing up for ourselves in the capacity we can. It is standing up for each other exactly for that reason of first they came for. So those of us with more privilege think about the ways that we can stand up in possibly ways that others can't.
Absolutely. And I think for us, we also think about as activists, we also think about just because we are not in that position doesn't mean that we do not fight back or advocate. And the other piece that people miss is think about who's being harmed the most. What are the repercussions?
Yes.
So I think when we lead with that, and use our privilege, I have privilege. I'm a naturalized citizen. Okay, I'm a
Mhm.
citizen. I'm going to go out and maybe walk someone into the courthouse for their appointment. So I love that there are bits and pieces based on capacity. So I'm going to ask you if you could speak directly to Congress. What would your demand be? I know what my demand would be. What would your demand be?
Yeah, I mean, I think here in particular, this is where being the ACLU of DC, being a DC resident, I have some pretty particular demands. For those of your listeners who don't know, DC is a capital city in which the 700,000 residents of DC do not have a vote in the very body of government that we say is a representative democracy. Um, People might not know that the residents of DC could not even vote for president until 1961. That's not too long ago. What
Exactly.
people also might not know is that in 1973, Congress gave us the right to govern ourselves. So we have a limited self governance where we pass our own laws, we raise our own taxes. And what I would say to Congress right now is that the Congress is trying to pass these so called public safety criminal justice bills on DC because of our limited self governance. They can do that. They can
Mhm.
pass laws directly affecting DC. And I would tell Congress in this moment, this is not just about DC. This is about our democracy because some of those bills would, um, take away due process. And when we think about those things, it's not only about DC residents, it's about those who visit, it
Yep.
is about those who protest, and they need to wake up and smell the canary in the coal mine and stand up for DC, because when you do, you are standing up for the rest of the country and sending a clear message that the rule of law, due process, our democracy should stay intact.
Absolutely. And a due process is what we need. I think most people are like, well, you want all no, no, due process. It's really simple. This is what we're asking. But also it's a domino effect. When we let it happen to DC, then we're saying it's okay to happen to other parts of the country. So yes, I'm gonna end it with what gives you hope
Oh, I
in
love
the
this.
current environment.
You know, this is gonna sound weird, I guess, maybe, but this is, when things are really, really bad, there is the sort of resilient human spirit that shows up. And right now, things are really, really dark. And what I see in my community is many more conversations, many more people asking how they can show up. The infusion in spaces of what we believe, whether we believe the exact same thing or not, we can settle on the value that we should have a government that is fair and just and allows us to keep the rights that we have. And, I'll say I'm a women's soccer fan, and so here in DC, we have the Spirit, they're fantastic, but it was amazing to be at a soccer game, and on the 51st minute, because DC wants to be the 51st state, the entire 19,000 people in the stands chanted "Free DC" because we are under the occupation of the National Guard, and it is that kind of indomitable human spirit that we will not let this go that is giving me hope.
So that spirit, but also the being able to also express it wherever you are, right? So wherever
Yes.
you are saying this is happening, and I think that's also part of reporting. And I love that it's like
Yes.
we have to continue to report of what's happening. I want to be 80 and say this is what I fought for. I fought for due process and democracy. So,
Yes.
thank you for joining me, Monica. Whew, a lot of work.
Thank
Um,
you for the work you're doing too, and sharing with people what's really going on.
Whew. Monica, yes, she brought it home. Thank you for joining us. So we're at the rally point, and I want to ask, how did we get here? How did the second administration fool us? How did we think it was not going to be cruel? So we are going to continue to stand up and speak out. And as of yesterday, again, good news and the rally point, Jasmine Crockett has announced she is running for Texas Senate. And I know she's going to fundraise in the millions. So I wanted to make sure that we talk about that fundraising, her candidacy, and how excited we are for her. So we've got to make sure that we support her. So we can't wait to see how that unfolds. I also want to talk about policy for her, what she's going to do running for Senate. That can't be easy. And then the other piece around the Epstein files, yes. So a judge allowed Ghislaine Maxwell's trafficking record to be unsealed. Yes. So they're going to unseal some of these files. Some of the records, as we know, she is in prison. So there were crimes committed. We now need to know who was part of the crimes besides her. So let's see how that unfolds, and let's see what the rich and powerful have to say or do to block this. So all right, I'm also answering questions for the following week. So send any questions my way. I am Emmy at Women's March Foundation. .org. I'm going to ask you to subscribe. I'm going to ask you to share. I am Emiliana, and I want to thank you for joining us. I'm your host at the Women's Lounge. Please share, subscribe, send us your questions, and stay loud, stay engaged. And remember, every issue is a woman's issue.